Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Vaibhav Tura. Welcome to Wealth Visions, the podcast about public and private market investing. We sit down with industry leaders in private equity, investment banking, real estate, venture capital, and portfolio management to uncover the key factors behind their success. We discuss work-life balance, mindset, risk management, and the lessons you can apply to excel in finance and business. Today, I'm honored to introduce a remarkable leader in the venture capital and merchant banking space, Mr. Praveen Varshney. As a principal of Varshney Capital Corp since 1991, he has played a big role in shaping the public venture capital markets with a focus on mining, real estate, and technology. He's also founding director of multiple social impact funds and has been recognized as one of the most influential business leaders in British Columbia. I am beyond thrilled to have him here today to share his insights on entrepreneurship, investments, and having a work-life balance. Mr. Praveen, it's a pleasure to make your acquaintance, and thank you very much for your time.
Bye, Bob. Nice to meet you, and same with you, Dipanshu.
Right. So let's begin from the early years, from your entrepreneurial journey. And what were those challenges? What were those learnings that you faced when you became the CEO since 1991, and even before, prior to that, when you were at UBC? And what were those challenges that you faced that really transformed just a big idea into powerhouse of a firm that stands here today?
Well, I guess the first thing is when you start life, you may not really know what you want to do, right? And so, like, even with my two kids, we said, look, I was about to leave high school, going to university. We basically said, it's okay if you don't know what you want to do when you grow up. You're too young. You got no life experience, no real world experience, right? And part of trying to figure out what you want to do is to try stuff and toss out the stuff you don't like. So it's kind of a process of narrowing things down, right? Mm-hmm. And even my own journey, like I started off at UBC in sciences, got love sciences, and grade 12 physics, math, chemistry, biology, did really well. And then I'm in UBC and these large classes, and then I failed physics. I'm like, man, I've never failed anything in my life. Man, it's so hard. It's gonna be my career, and I'm gonna enjoy this. I don't think so, right? So I had to redo physics, and then I thought, okay, let me try business. Because growing up, you may think of the big professions, especially in Indian families, doctor, lawyer, dentist, whatever.
Right.
And then there's always whatever your mom and dad did, right? You're kind of familiar with it. You grew up around it. So dad was an accountant, was doing well in his career. So anyways, I moved into business, and I realized actually it was more about people, networking, that kind of thing. But then in Sauder, the business school at UBC, and so I did my accounting. And when I graduated, I left and joined KPMG, one of the big firms, and great experience. Did that for 5 years, but it really wasn't me, because back then you started in auditing. Mm-hmm. Now the profession is different. They've recognized they need to get more people into the profession, so you can come in through tax or corporate finance, that kind of thing. But back then it was always audit, and with auditing, you're going through historical records like paper and receipts of a company or a person for the tax return. And I remember thinking, what am I doing going through someone else's historical shit? Like, I want to create something, have them go through my historical shit, right? So, and then I was going to try and move into the tax department to get a bit of extra experience at the firm's time and dime, and then bugger off. And although I didn't know what I was going to do, but and then what happened was, and as serendipity, and my dad would tell you, it was one of the best things that ever happened. But at that particular time, they didn't have much room in the Canadian tax department, so I didn't get selected. And these big professional firms, like accounting firms, every year they got a cull because they got to make room for the labor coming in at the bottom, right? And so the audit department needs to get rid of a few people. So I remember sitting down with a managing partner on a Friday, and he's like, Praveen, I'm sorry, there wasn't room for you in tax, and obviously you don't want to be in audit. And then you realize, okay, he's basically trying to fire you, right? And your natural reaction is like, I'm going to quit before they let you fire me, right? And then I was living at home, and I came home to talk to my father, and he said, because I knew nothing about HR, he goes, you don't quit because then you don't get paid severance. I'm like, oh, okay, severance, okay. And so Monday morning, I'm back in the office with the managing partner. Okay, you've taken the time to think about it. What do you want to do? And I go, what do you want to do? Right? And then I created sort of this working severance period for about 6 months. And then I had this mutual fund I was auditing. And so I thought, okay, I really want to finish that job and get that experience. And then I used to help out with their schooling for the big final exams. And it was kind of a fun couple of weeks kind of thing. So, and then I kind of used that period to just kind of also start networking. So like every coffee, I actually don't drink coffee, but every meeting, squash game, whatever it was, just to network and meet people, learn about what people are doing, what's out there. And then I ended up joining my dad, who had another partner back then. And we all three of us had kind of a small accounting practice, right? So had small business entrepreneurs for a bit of the cash flow. And my father already kind of shifted away from just pure doing accounting. And he was primarily working with entrepreneurs. And then he was starting to dabble in investing on the side. And part of the realization he had was, he's working with some entrepreneurs, and he's like, man, like, I'm smarter than some of these people. Like, and seeing them make all this kind of money, right? You go, if they could do this, I can do this. Like,
that's when the shift started.
Yeah, it's like he calls it the why not me factor, right? And if they can do this, I can do it. Why not me? There's no good reason why not me, right? We got the same 24 hours, work hard, And so I got exposed to investing through him, and then. As I mentioned earlier, when I left KPMG, my dad said, you're going to look back and say this is the best thing that ever happened to you, because it basically forced my hand to become the accidental entrepreneur. And so we kind of ended up where we are through the path of entrepreneurship. And that's another thing I talked about, because you may have an end goal, but there's rarely ever a straight path to it, right? And so, our family office, venture capital investing, came through CPA to, entrepreneurship to where we are now. But during the entrepreneurship phase, the very first project I worked on with the family ended up becoming a multi-billion-dollar diamond mine in northern Canada. And so it was a really fun time, and kind of an interesting story too, because back then nobody thought there was diamonds in Canada. So it took these two geologists, Charles Fitke and I forget the other guy's name, but people thought they were crazy because all the textbooks said no diamonds in Canada. And so I like sharing the story because it's so interesting and fascinating. But they basically said, look, no, there are diamonds. And so how do we find them? And in diamond mines, one of the big host geological structures is something called a kimberlite pipe. Okay, so it's like a cone-like carrot eruption on land. And so below surface, deep below is where the diamonds are formed because of pressure. And then when this thing comes up, it brings the diamonds to the surface. So like, okay, these kimberlite pipes are somewhere. That was part one of the theory. The second part was, okay, these pipes also have not only diamonds, but these unique stones called garnets. And then the third part of the theory was, okay, in northern Canada, Northwest Territories, when the glaciers were there and then they receded, they would have scraped the tops of these things and left a debris mineral train. So they started exploring through a very simple exploration technique called soil sampling. Literally just get on your hands and knees and grab chunks of rocks and analyze it, see what's there, right? So they started finding these unique garnets, and they traced them back, and all of a sudden when there was no more garnets, they realized, okay, this is where the pipe was, and they got scraped this way. So they drilled, and that's how they discovered kimberlite pipes and diamonds. And what happens in mining is when there's a big discovery, there's a big staking rush, just like the gold rush days.
Right.
So a lot of small junior public companies went up there and started grabbing the land. And there's an expression: the best place to find a new mine is next to an old mine, right? Or an old discovery. So we did that, and then followed the same exploration technique and discovered our kimberlite pipes. And mining and resource exploration is kind of like life sciences and pharma. Like the little guy takes all the risk, and then try and find a big partner with the expertise and the deep pockets to help take you through to the promised land, right? So we spent $1 billion turning it into an operating, producing diamond mine, still producing diamonds today. Anyway, so my roots are actually in the mining resource sector, and it's always been part of what we do. My younger brother, Piyush, who's a lawyer, he sort of moved in a number of years ago to sort of manage those opportunities. With mining and resource exploration, there's not a lot of people, and you have some consulting geologists, and so I think that's one of the reasons I kind of moved away from it, because I like working with people, like a company that's got lots of staff, employees.
Right. And
but over the years, we've worked in copper, zinc, uranium, lithium. I've done really well building some more companies and selling them. And then during the entrepreneurial phase, that was about a 14-year run where we were day-to-day entrepreneurs building companies. The second company was a company called Thunderbird Gaming, which became a very successful casino company, also a public company. And we were working with First Nations Indian bands in California, helping them set up their casinos because they were all destitute and looking for ways to get out of poverty. And so that was a good fun ride. Also, we'll do some passive investing where you just write a check and sit back. But for the most part, the bigger checks, the bigger capital, and more importantly, our time are spent on projects where we want to be involved. And not operationally, but through a board seat or advisory role or even a part-time CFO role for a company called justify and afford a full-time CFO.
Okay.
And I guess there's several reasons why we like that. One, the risk reward ratio, right? Because when you start something that's early stage, 2, 3, 4, 5 million valuation, you can build it to 10x or more, versus something that's already, like all the the returns already kind of squeezed out of it, right? And then the other thing is, with these smaller early stage companies, you can really make an impact. So just one piece of advice, guidance, or a contact can just change the complexion of a company.
And you're a big fan of that too, do lots of social impact investing too. You really like that.
Yeah, and so that was part of the journey as well. So when we started the family office, the first company we worked with was in Victoria, a company called Carmana, and we built it into Canada's largest solar company. There was a rocket ship ride. It went from a startup to 75 million in revenues in 5 years. It was 75% CAGR. It was basically almost doubling every year, which gets harder as the base is getting bigger to keep doubling it. And it basically was the accidental serendipitous start to impact investing before it was even a word or thing. This is like 22 years ago. And I ended up making that a focus for the family, because I turned to my father and brother and said, look, if you can do good and make money, right, we should be doing more of this kind of investing versus casinos. And no disrespect to many people that make their living in that legal industry. It just didn't fit our values, because you're also hurting some people along the way.
Of course.
The second factor was just the lens of becoming a parent. So we had our daughter Jaya and our son Anish, and then all of a sudden you have these beautiful little people in your life, and you're thinking about, well, how do you fix the planet and some of these societal issues for them and future generations, and use business as that tool to create sustainable change. Because charity and philanthropy is important and needed. And my wife, who's also CPA, has been running our family foundation for many years. But it's sustainable businesses, how we're going to fix the air, the soil, the ocean, the plastic, that kind of thing. And as I said earlier, if you can do good and make money, that's a no-brainer. And impact, the impact community, investors, entrepreneurs, they're just lovely people. Like the high bar, somebody invites your house for dinner, right? And so we're quite well known as an impact investment shop. In our current portfolio, we've got probably 24 businesses. Each one, if I explain to you what it does, and more importantly, it's why it exists, you go, that's amazing, right? Yeah, so it's been good fun. And we've proven multiple times that by doing good, you could do well financially. You don't need to sacrifice return. And I guess the last thing I'd add as part of the journey into the family office is we created a real estate division for the family. So I spend a lot of my time working on real estate opportunities. So we own a number of hotels, apartment buildings, warehouses, are doing some development now. And it's also been one of the best ways to create passive income.
And diversify.
Diversify as well. And you see that because a lot of the wealthiest families on the planet are real estate. So I turned to my dad and my brother and said, look, we got to get more serious about real estate. And mom and dad, like a lot of immigrants, would dabble. They'd buy another house or a condo and rent it out. But that, quite frankly, is not really being a real estate investor. That's speculation. Because you're basically doing the coupon clip. Your mortgage is this, your rent's this, you got a little small pay down on your mortgage, and then you're hoping inflation takes the whole thing up. And then you see the trade go against you, like we have when interest rates go high, right? So actively investing in real estate is sort of the model where you can, apply a business plan. And in any business, there's only two things you can do. It sounds trite and so simple, but it is. Like, one is, drive down the cost somehow, because every dollar saved goes straight to the bottom line. And with some economies of scale, you can impact that better. And then two, drive the top line somehow. And so, and that increases the net income. So one of my business partners, who I first started, building out, the real estate division with, it's fun talking about, because he's a son of a very, very successful businessman, real estate businessman. And, within like a year, I learned everything you could about real estate investing through him. But one of the first things was, his name is Steve Barazan. You got to buy it right. Because in real estate, a lot of the risk is if you overpay. You got to buy it right. Two, he said, you need to try and find things that are off market. Okay, because when you get the Collier's brochure faxed to you, that means a lot of the bigger real estate guys.
Everyone knows.
Yeah, the club deals. They get the phone calls, and those are gone, and so you get the schlep shit, right? Three, try and find something that's got some, they call it hair. It's a risk or it's opportunity, right? And also, you never sell good real estate. So you just buy Yeah, and then it's called refinancing. At some point, you can refinance.
Yeah.
And so when he explained it to me, I go, you can do that. Like, I can buy that building. We can add enough value. At some point, we can refinance, like take our original capital out tax free, still own it, and still get the cash flow. That sounds like a gift from the gods. Like, right? And so we've had a lot of success over the years.
I mean, it's remarkable. You've been in mining, you've been in real estate, you've been in tech, you've helped early growth companies. You've been doing that since 1991. You've had 29 investments, 12 exits, 17 portfolio companies focused on all these mixtures of these industries. I wanted to learn a bit more about how was the start? Were you focusing on all of these industries, or was it more of a narrowed down focused? And
Yeah,
was approach more like understanding one industry, understanding the mechanics and economics of one narrow place, and then go on about diversification and getting into other industries?
yeah. So by the way, it's interesting because like people ask, hey, like you've made money in all these different sectors, like all these different areas of mining that I talked about, all these different areas of real estate. And we worked in food, solar, blockchain, like all these different industries. And we're two CPAs and a lawyer. We're not experts in anything. And so it comes back to the team thing. The whole model is to partner with people way smarter than you and be the dumbest guy in the room, right? And so some people just want to invest in a sector they know, and we've always kind of been agnostic, right? Because more about the opportunity, and then later became more about it's got to be impact, as a starting point. But you learn in business, it's partly about pattern recognition. Like you see the same issues over and over again. It doesn't matter what company, what industry, what size. They got HR, marketing, branding, whatever, finance, and you kind of have a playbook because as I said, you've seen the same issues over and over again. So we know business overall, but we want to partner with subject matter experts because I'm never going to know what you know, right? Because you spent the whole career learning it, right? But I'm a smart guy. I can learn quick and I can get to know enough. But again, I don't want to be the expert. That's why I have you as my partner, right? So it's a different model. Like some people just as they stick to the knitting and whatever, right? And even with us, it's minority investing generally, right? Because with early stage startups, like we want the founders to have a big pound of flesh, so they're motivated to want to build, right? And I kind of equate it to we're trying to create as many different lottery tickets, right, for the least amount of risk and cost possible.
The highest reward.
Yeah, and then but way better odds than the real lottery, or it's pure gambling, right? Mentoring, which I was just doing to help the community, I ended up realizing this is kind of an interesting path to investing, because with angel investing, early stage investing, you can't do that much due diligence. Right? It's a startup. There's a lot of history, so I call it the T's. It's about timing and the team and the TAM and maybe some traction. A bunch of T's. And when you mentor, you really get to know the person, the company, the industry from the inside without stroking a check. And so I've mentored like people for up to a year, just pro bono, free, just to help. But eventually the conversation turns into, oh, we need to raise money, and they naturally turn to you because they know you so well, and they see how much free value you've given them, right? And so at that point, I've got a much more informed basis to make that investment decision. So I'm finding we're picking way more winners than losers because of this walk before you run model, right? And then on the flip side, when I'm coaching entrepreneurs on fundraising, right? I go, look, when you meet someone, don't hit them up for money, okay? Because like busy investor types are always being hit up, right? That's what I'll often tell these entrepreneurs. I go, look, my little angel check, 25, 50 grand, 100 grand, whatever, it's not going to change your life. What you really want is my knowledge, experience, and contacts, right? So now, on the flip side, so you get to build this relationship with someone and show them why they should back you, right? So it's kind of a sneaky way to get into a check from them, right? Yeah. And one of the things I learned and I talk about and I've helped write some books about is the power of building a personal brand, integrity as being a cornerstone to building my personal brand, right? And I talk about two types of integrity. There's an internal integrity that's being true to yourself and your values, right? It's the old, how do you act when no one's watching, right? If I tell the kids you shouldn't litter, if I'm in the forest by myself, I shouldn't litter, right? And then the second one is the external integrity, which is saying what you mean and doing what you said you're going to do, like keeping your promises. even better, I use a lot of acronyms. It's an expression I pronounce UPOD, UPOD, which stands for under promise and over deliver, as opposed to OPUD, over promising and under deliver, right? You create luck. And I literally just had it happen 2 weeks ago, speaking on a panel by Spring that put on virtually. That's an impact investment shop here. And this doctor saw me and called me the next day, and then I took him out to play pickleball. That's another thing I love.
You love
about.
pickleball.
All right, well, we'll talk a few minutes about that too.
So,
but anyways, I took him out to play pickleball, and then now he's investing in a real estate company and a couple of medical things, right? And so that's because I was on this Zoom panel, right? But actually, so we'll digress to pickleball. So I played every sport under the sun growing up, and I played all the racket sports. I was high school badminton champion in grade 10. I played competitive tennis with my younger brother, a lot of ping pong. I never really got into squash. It was just starting to take off when I was at UBC, and I thought I'd better learn squash. And then I just didn't like being in these confined quarters. I always thought I was going to be hit by the racket or something. I know, right? Ball. Yeah. I'm like, oh. And then, I played soccer until age 30, volleyball, baseball, softball, ball hockey for many, many years. And then what happened was with my wife, she wasn't really an athlete per se. She was more focused on the arts, like, the plays and music and stuff like that. And then she started playing pickleball. And that was when our 2 kids were at UBC. So you're kind of, as a couple, empty nesterish. So you got more time as a couple again. So I thought, okay, well, we don't really play sports. We go, for a walk with a dog and did some yoga, but not a sport. And so I started playing with her once a week, co-ed. And it's kind of evolved, 5 years later to I play, many times a week. And I use it as a business tool to start relationships with, instead of the golf course. Because golf takes so long, it's like 4+ hours, and then you have some food and drinks. It's a full day affair.
I know.
And pickleball, 1 hour done, and it's become part of my personal brand. So a lot of people know me as, sort of a Pied Piper at pickleball, like literally. And we've introduced hundreds and hundreds of like couples and people to the sport because I'm so passionate about it. And then it's evolved to the point where last year we started a business. And
you've put lots of pickleballs in Queen Elizabeth Park, right?
Yeah. So that was a volunteer thing. So I was on the Vancouver Pickleball Association board, and I joined that to help create some more courts for the public to play because there's not many places to play. So we have these beautiful courts up at Queen Elizabeth Park, down by the Jericho Sailing Center and a couple other places. But then evolved into an actual business called IPOP, IPOP, which stands for Inclusive Place of Pickleball. And so me and a couple of partners were building out indoor facilities for people to play. So we've got one in Burnaby that's going to be opening this fall with 9 courts.
Oh, wow.
We're looking at one in Victoria, and Nanaimo, Parksville, Surrey. Another big one's being built as we speak in Penticton with 16 courts.
Wow.
So you've played.
I have played pickleball only once in my life.
Okay, but you liked it.
I loved it. Yeah, I love tennis as well, and pickleball is kind of like the mixture of tennis and ping pong.
Oversized ping pong, yeah.
And I've played. It's a good workout too.
And it's very inclusive because it doesn't matter what age. Athleticism wise, like my dad's 82. We were playing in Mexico, and our kids play. It's not many sports you have multi-gens play together, right? Sure. And I truly believe. Well, let me back up. So we all know we want a long life, but the quality to go with it, physically and mentally, right? So I think it's going to be a sport for elderly people. It does 3 things. One, it's going to keep older people fit longer. Right? I have a fellow that I've played with who's 92. It's crazy. This guy's actually pretty good.
Really? Can you move fast and hit the ball?
Yeah, I like it because it's not about brute strength, right? And then we're playing doubles. Singles is a lot more work, but with doubles, you don't have to even cover that much.
You do have to be agile, though.
Yeah. But he's moving around and giving you a decent run. So it's going to keep older people fit longer. 2, a lot of older people unfortunately deal with social isolation and loneliness, especially after a spouse dies. So for example, a friend of mine, her father's gone, but her mom plays a couple times a week, and then coffee with her girlfriends. And I mean, that's another stat is relationships is
way to connect.
Yeah, is what keeps you alive longer. And then thirdly, you've tried it once, Vida, but it can be a fast sport, and so for brain health, I think it's keep Alzheimer's and Parkinson's at bay. right? Because you need like fast reflexes. And then one of the things I like about it, because it is a mixture of all the sports you just mentioned, but there's an element of also volleyball. Like I played a lot of volleyball, and so when you're digging a spike, it's like digging a smash in pickleball. Like you actually have to get low, bend your knees, and just kind of cushion the ball back over, right? And then with the fast reflex stuff, it reminds me of my ball hockey days, and you're a goalie, and then or a shortstop in baseball, and so I just I love everything about it. So. And then you can turn it into business and make money out of it, right?
Absolutely. So, definitely fits your criteria of social impact.
Yeah.
And, as well as investing and all.
Totally.
Yeah. In terms of, you mentioned a little bit about the patterns in terms of recognizing whether they're entrepreneurs or whether they're businesses and, any kind of industry. Let's talk a bit more about those patterns. How can you find those patterns, and what are those set of variables that remain constant amongst winning investments?
So one of the most important ones is the team, right? Execution. And so you can take a unproven entrepreneur, and Michael Dell starts Dell in his dormitory in college. If he's a billionaire, right? But generally, entrepreneurs are going to fail their way to success. So team is definitely a big one. Also, because we're not small business focused, like we want companies that can make a big impact and scale, right? And so things like what's the revenue model, and like business where you're just selling something one off, like that's a slog, man. Like I learned that early. I go, wow, like how do you make payroll? Because you kind of have a handle on your cost side, and it's only so much you can do on the cost side, and then it becomes all about the top line, right? But when the revenues are lumpy, right, and you've got to make payroll still, like that's tricky. So you learn, okay, some of the best businesses have recurring revenue or
consistency
or repeat revenue, right? The contact lens company was disposable lenses, and so every 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, you got to buy more contacts, right? And the cost of shipping wasn't that prohibitive, and so you could set people up on a subscription model, right? Food's good because you got to eat, right? And also like SaaS, a lot of people realize, okay, like that's why they want SaaS companies, right? So they get the recurring stable revenue. And actually kind of upsets me a bit because there's a number of funds that I know, and all they do is look for SaaS deals. I'm like, man, there's a lot more to life and business and fixing the planet than just focusing on freaking SaaS revenue companies, right? I mean, those are some of the key things. I actually have several sort of filters that I use to high level look at some of these companies at the start. And, there's like, one of them is, I call it a quadrant model. So you look at the revenues and the margins. And so in management consulting, they always talked about, you want to be that top right quadrant. But, so a business could be low margin, low recurring, or it could be high margin, high recurring, right? Or other permutations of it, right? Grocery stores are high volume, low margin, right? And it can work. So that's sort of one way to kind of just high level, where does this business fit? And then, I mentioned a bunch of the T's earlier that you look at. Another one is there's all these sort of variables. Is this business global in scope or not? Or is it a local business, right? Patents. And patents aren't necessarily the be all and end all, because you'll learn that a patent's only good as your ability to defend it. And so if you're a small company and some big guy wants to infringe, you got to spend a lot of money trying to defend it. You could, potentially go down defending your patents, right? But it's nice to have, especially on an
still
exit.
Good to be cognizant of those areas.
Yeah, so if they're there, great. But it's not like, okay, some people are, okay, I need your IP first and your patents first, right? Because a lot of these businesses these days are about speed to market, and it's a land grab for customers and or key partnerships.
Because everyone wants things fast, right?
Yeah, well, because the because what happens? You start a business, and then competition there's opportunity to make money, and the competition sets in, and so you got to like as I said, get some. And then if you have a sticky business model, it's hard to get displaced, right? And if you do a partnership deal on an exclusive basis, then you've locked out the competitor, right? So again, this is sort of a bit of the pattern recognition stuff. You see the same issues over again, and then marketing is a huge one. And when I was at UBC, people that went to marketing, they went to HR. I'm like, well, what is this floofy stuff, right? It's a finance and the accounting, right? And then you get in the real world, you realize, shit, everything rolls around people. right? And with both our kids, we said, hey, like, take sociology, take psychology, take some of these courses that have been around for thousands of years, because it is valuable. That's been around for thousands of years because it's so valuable, right?
Because human beings have been around for way
Oh
longer.
my God, right? And so I'm like, okay, I get it. Why, and so I've actually been known to put in a proper HR department into my businesses sooner than most, because some people see it as a cost center, and I see it as an investment in your people, your culture, right? And there's this whole sort of shift and movement, and we're investors in a company called Workforce Wellness. But basically, people used to talk about CX, customer experience, like that's super important. And then you realize, well, no, like the base there is EX, employee experience. Because if your culture is shit and people don't like working there, you're gonna lose a customer anyways.
Of course.
So let's get the EX right? And so I don't want some secretary or person doing HR part-time on their desk. I want some full-time. That's their job, is to make it a place for people to have fun and grow and develop, that kind of stuff.
So we spoke a little bit about capital raising, and since the industry has changed and there's so many new markets, there's so many VC funds, and there's so many entrepreneurs who want to start their own private equity firms and search funds, independent sponsors alike.
Yeah.
What's the advice to those people who say, hey, we want to raise capital and we want to put together a fund? Perhaps if we could use your example, when you first started doing your own deals, were you putting your own cash into those deals, or did you have access to other financiers, or taking advantage of other structuring possibilities such as earnouts and mezzanine debt and all these kind of things?
Yeah. So initially, investing was primarily with our own capital, but also because it's early stage investing, the raises aren't that large, but you're also trying to bring in other smart, value aligned and smart strategic value add investors in the boat with you, right? So we generally don't want to be the only check. We actually want other smart people in the deal with us, right? So it was more, they call it a merchant banking model. So we're coming in as a lead investor on the deal, and then we have this global network of investors that we return to. I remember, when I was about 30, coming home, my wife's like, so honey, what do you do again? I go, well, we raise money for these entrepreneurs and businesses, and literally get on the phone and or email people, and money shows up, right? And so determining who you talk to is determined by, like, again, how big the raise and what kind of deal it is, right? So you kind of learn about the various investors that we have, that we've worked with. So some like mining, some like cash flow, some like real estate. We had some investors that just like to work with us on whatever we show them, right? And so it's just past the hat model. And then once the companies get bigger and need bigger checks, well, then we have a network of funds and brokerage firms and other people that we tap into. And then it eventually led into starting a couple of funds. So we had some investors say, look, instead of just calling us every time you have a deal, why don't you just start a fund? And we're initially like, nah, it's more of a headache. And then we started a couple of impact funds. One's called Pythera, that's done very well. And then we had another one called Humanitas, which did very well. And we're now investors in several funds like Spring, I mentioned. We're working with them. There's a one out of Singapore called True Global Ventures that's just crushed it. That really been a fun ride with these guys. But we've got probably half a dozen fund investments. And it's kind of interesting because as you kind of get on in your career and you get used to this life and lifestyle and of just having time freedom, and that's a key thing. Like, financial freedom leads to time freedom to do things that you want to do versus that you have to do, right? Yeah. And so I've been fortunate. I'm able to sort of work my whole life around the big balls that you don't want to drop and shatter. So, like, health and family, and so that's another important thing that we should touch on. So when I'm mentoring people, we'll talk about the business stuff. At the end, I always like to poke on, so where are you with your health, with your diet, that kind of stuff, right? Because when you have a family, and my wife didn't work, and so I was the sole provider, and and then you have kids, you have dependents, even more people that rely on you, right? So I used to put family marginally ahead of my health in terms of priorities. And then you realize, especially you have a couple of health crises, and I had a couple over the years, and then you're like, shit, actually I have to put my health marginally in front of family for unselfish reasons. Because if I'm not healthy, I can't take care of them. In fact, if I get sick, I'm a liability because they get care of me, right? And it's no different than, that when you're on the plane, you got to put your oxygen mask on first, because if you're dead, the kid's dead, right? But it's the same thing in the business. So if you're the CEO, right, the entrepreneur, your business and all the stakeholders need you around, right? And so you got to make sure you take care of numero uno. And then, one of the things that like our family office is not very large, but we've had staff here for many, many years. But we treat them like family, but we also treat them like adults, right? Yeah. And so, like some companies are so locked down, and I get it, it's harder when you have a lot more people. But we had this, one lady who was working for us, and then, she's like, Praveen, my kid fell down at school, he's hurt. And I'm like, what are you talking to me for? Like, go, you don't need my permission. Like, get the hell out of here. I do that, right? And it's just treating others how you want to be treated yourself, right? And
100%. And yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with you in terms of health. I was going to get to the point of, obviously, when we talk about wealth, we, often associate with money. But, you could have all the money in the world, but
Totally.
if you don't have the health, you are not going to be able to enjoy it.
Yeah.
You're not going to be able to enjoy people around you who are going to be, saddened by that. And, that's definitely one of the key areas of what true wealth really means to people. Right?
For sure.
Right. So in terms of competition, let's talk a bit more about that. There's always this thought of red ocean and blue ocean strategy. Red ocean being where you're fighting for competition. It's a concentrated market and so many players and so much demand. And on the other hand, there's blue ocean. You make the competition irrelevant. Considering where you are now, is that something that you care about? And is that something that you're beyond? Because, Peter Thiel is always known for saying competition is for losers. So I just want to get a sense of what you think when you hear the word competition.
Yeah. So, like it's rare you ever have a situation where you're a monopoly or oligopoly. So there's always going to be competition. And for me, it's not, sometimes it is a bit concerning, but other times it's not, because you realize, okay, like, they're going to help, raise the market, right? And build the community for the product or service.
There's
or
a price gouging and the fights and all that. Right?
Well, yeah. And then there's also like, you can work with competition. Like I've seen a number of times over years where like you have a problem in your business, and so you create a solution. Then you realize, well, other companies that are like you have the same problem, and then you basically turn into a business unit, turn into like a revenue opportunity working with the competition, right? And then a lot of these businesses, like, we end up exiting them. And so just kind of keeping tabs on, the competition, especially the bigger ones, is a great way to kind of start building relationships and eventually exit to them, right? So, and then, because we're not like a venture capital fund where we're trying to pick the unicorns, right? Because it's just a different problem when you have a lot of capital. And like I was just with a friend who interned with us, and he worked for, one of the pension funds in, Canada. And they can only look at companies that are doing, $2 billion EV, right? Because they had to deploy big chunks of capital. So our business model is not venture in the sense that, 1 out of 10's got to be unicorn and make up for all the losers. Like we want to make money on every single deal, right? It's just a question of how much and over what time frame, right? And so, so I mean, when you're starting early and there's usually not that much competition, you can usually carve out enough of a market share to create enough value to, exit to someone.
Right. When we talk about these portfolio companies that you invest in and you want to make sure that they're the winners, how involved are you in terms of their processes, in terms of their day-to-day activities, in terms of making sure that, yes, they have a strategy, they have the people, they have the processes, and they make money?
Well, quite involved, right? As I said, like, when we're putting our own capital in, hard-earned money, and then we're custodians of other people's capital to come into the investment with us, right? Who are basically like their eyes and ears for them. You take that job seriously, right? And there's a couple of things that I think that have kept us in good stead over the years. So one is, and we teach this to entrepreneurs that we invest in, is OPM, other people's money. You can't treat your investors' money like your own. You actually have to treat it better than your own. That's a higher standard, right? I don't like losing money, but I feel worse when I've lost someone else's money that came in on trust and relied on you, right? And sure, there's business risk and execution, people recognize it, but you still feel bad, right? And then the other sort of corollary to that is, if you focus on making money for the people around you, meaning your fellow shareholders, as a founder with a big chunk of equity, by making them money, you're going to do fine, right? So, but yeah, so it's and it's fun, like when you have these exits, and we like to work with entrepreneurs right through to the exit. You're doing trips together, making donations to fun causes together, right? That kind of stuff. So those are sort of the fruits of the byproduct of just building a great company.
Absolutely. So yeah, I just have one last question.
Mm-hmm.
We talked a bit about true wealth. We talked a bit about how important family is to you. We talked a bit about how important human character is to you. We talked about integrity. In terms of really leaving your children with obviously the financial wisdom and other life lessons, what is the most important thing that you would want to leave them with?
Oh wow. I think to just be kind, right? So like I look at our kids, and they're turn out to be wonderful entrepreneurs in their own rights, and but what my wife and I, we talk about it, we love, is we see how they treat their grandparents. Okay, so both of them, like my wife's parents, my parents, they're 5 minutes from each other, but our kids go out of the way to just call them, drop in on them. Anish, my son, was in LA for 10 days. The first thing, I picked him up at the airport. He's got to go. I got to see my, Nanaji, our paternal grandfather, right? Jay, our daughter, were out for my birthday last year, and my family four went out for dinner. And my parents came along. At the end of the night, they parked the block away, and Jay just grabbed my mom by the arm and walked to her car. Right? No one tells her to do that; she just does that, right? So I think, just to be kind. Right. Actually, this reminds me of a story. So last March, my wife and I had a wonderful opportunity to go to northern India to meet with the Dalai Lama.
Wow.
Yeah. So we sat in his home for an hour, to this wonderful gentleman who's going to be 90 next year. And I hadn't really set my own expectations, because the handlers kind of said, look, hey, you don't really know how much time we're going to have. This guy gets up 3 a.m., whatever, right? You might have 10 minutes or whatever, right? But I thought, okay, he's going to tell us the secrets of life, right? How to be happy, and all these wonderful stories and sagas and fables, right? And he just kept repeating the same short message verbatim over and over over that course of the hour, which I'll tell you what it was in a second. And then after, the small group of us that was there, we're debriefing, and we're like, is he senile? Like, did he forget he told us that, right? And then his message was, the problem with mankind, humanity, society is we focus too much on the differences. Okay, we are all the same. Okay. We're all born from a mother. We all have the same needs and wants, raise a family, get educated, all that kind of stuff, right? You're one religion, you're another. Who cares? So stop looking at and focusing on the differences. We are all the same. So like, okay, I get it. Like, that was the message. The message was the message. It's that short and simple and powerful, right? And so, and if the world, needs that so much more now these days, right? You just see all these freaking, conflicts and wars and stuff like that, right? So just to be good human beings, and be kind to the planet and animals, to each other, to yourself, right? And
at the end of the day, that's what matters. And sometimes it's the most simplest things in life
totally,
that have the biggest impact.
So that's what I'd say.
I mean, I'm like, personally, I kind of have a similar philosophy too. We often, I'm young, and everyone who's young who wants to get into finance, are like, okay, I want to make lots of money, and I want to do this, do that. But my personal thing is, if I can't be happy right now, this second, I'm not going to be happy once I have all the wealth that's going for it.
Well, and maybe I'll just end on this thing, because you just triggered a thought. So I was interviewed in a magazine during COVID, and so I was talking about my views on money and wealth, right? And so I said, like, yeah, money, like, some people think, oh, money is the root of all evil, right? And then, but actually, no, like, money is a tool, it's energy, and it's like a river. You got to let the river flow. You can't block it, dam it, hoard it, right? And then I think of 4 buckets. So, again, we told the kids, like, okay, the first bucket you want to keep full is your life and lifestyle bucket. If you like travel and, or going to a restaurant and ordering wherever you want, not worrying about price, you need a full lifestyle bucket, right? And then the second bucket, as I call it, our charity and philanthropy bucket. And so I'm driven to make as much money as I humanly can as possible, not because I have this crazy ass life and lifestyle, but because you can do more charity stuff. So I'm trying to make more so I can give away more, right?
Make an impact.
Yeah, and a good friend of mine, Dave, he shared this with me, and it kind of like the light bulb clicked on. He goes, yeah, like, him and his wife, we're doing all this stuff with our foundation, and we're doing it with a warm hand as opposed to when we're dead and gone and can't even see what happened with it. I go, Dave, you hit the nail on the head. That's why I love giving, helping, mentoring, and charity stuff, because I can see the impact, right? Yeah. And I've never done drugs, but like giving and helping is my endorphin hit, and I'm looking for the next endorphin hit, right? So I'm trying to keep a very full, charity philanthropy bucket. My third bucket, I call it my angel investing bucket. So I'm trying to, get entrepreneurs seeded and get them going, and then obviously it's not just about the capital; it's advice, guidance, contacts. But obviously I don't want to lose money. But the whole thought is to help one more person or persons become successful, so they got the financial freedom and the time freedom, so they can go fund a charity or another entrepreneur. So I'm trying to replicate, multiply it, build the ecosystem, right? And my last bucket is, I call it my random acts of kindness bucket, where it's just you can do whatever you want with your money, right? So a quick story: I had a personal trainer, and she was having her first holiday in years after student loans still from UBC, and so I'm like, Lydia, here's just $200 cash. Go have a nice bottle of wine and a dinner on me, right? And she's, oh my God, thank you. So I think wealth is just this wonderful thing that you can do a lot of stuff with if you have the right mindset, right?
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much. This was definitely a learning journey for me. Love to talk about philanthropy, and those are definitely the areas that I'm interested in as well. But there are certain things that you have to put first in priority, and only then you're able to do those certain things. So thanks a lot, and thank you for your time.
All right. No, thank you, Vaibhav and Dipanshu, and good luck with your studies and life. And if I can be of help or service, please reach out. And we're definitely got to get the kickball game in.
Let's do it.
Okay. All right.